Okay, today gonna be only introduction. And introduction will be into biology. And I shared with you last week that for me, um, this course is just, you know, for you to listen and enjoy and learn something new. Okay, this is not a course for me. The goal is not to drill you, not to quiz you hard on this material. You can relax, okay? You can relax. I promise you, you're all gonna pass this course. For me, to fail the students, you really have to abuse in terms of attendance, in terms of basically you have to do nothing not to pass this course. If you do something, you'll pass. It's again, you'll pass it. It just depends what will be the grade, okay? So for biology, biology introduction, what you can see the objectives is what is all about, scientific thinking, and then we're going to talk about characteristics of living organisms, which is the first step when you talk about biology. And this one is, what is the science, first of all? Biology is not the only science. There is physics, chemistry, there is astronomy, there is geology, geography, right? But I mean, any single science, any single research, any single development has to start with what? What do you think? What's the first step in science? Yes, please.
Asking a question about the phenomena around us.
Absolutely, yes. Every single thing starts with a question. So what you can see, does radiation released by cell phones cause brain tumors? Are antibacterial hand soaps better than regular? Why is morning breath so stinky? Why it's easier to remember gossip than physics equations? What is blood doping? And why it's so much easier for an infant to learn complex language than it's for a college student to learn biology? So tell me, which one of these questions you would like to find an answer?
I say the last one because I can it's real because kids and infants learn faster than adults. When a person plays the piano, they learn from a very young age. So definitely the last question.
I'm interested in the first question.
First question. First of all, it doesn't. I think there was enough research to show that cell phones don't really cause brain tumors. Plus, the new generations of phones, they emit very limited radiation. But for the last question, yes. So, anyone has any ideas, actually, why it's easier for the child to learn than for adult?
The baby brains are constantly taking in new information every minute, and they're supposed to learn language. I think they know 5,000 or 4,000 words by the time they're 3 or 4, and whereas adult brains are developed enough to weed out information that they don't find interesting or relevant to their lives?
First of all, yeah, you're right to a certain extent, definitely. First of all, children learn language differently than adults, right? So you want to learn new language, you learn it through what? You learn it through language that you already know, right? Right, Moon? Yes?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for example, if I want to learn, let's say if I want to learn Spanish, right? I basically process Spanish, not even through one language, I process through 2 languages. I learn Spanish through Russian and I learn Spanish through English. right? Children learn language basically, first of all, by imitation, like imitating the sounds. This is one thing. And a child's brain is developing brain. It's very what's called plastic. What is a plastic? It means it's easier to make and build connections between neurons in child brain. And it goes in many, many different venues. It goes through movement. Kids learn new movements. And kids learn new information. Kids learn new skills. While adult brain is more or less established. You already learned most of the things you need in your life, which means it's less flexible. It's hard to teach adult brain new tricks. Okay, that's why you have to keep learning through your whole life. If you really, really want your brain to be to slow down the aging process, if you really want to prevent early issues with memories, early dementia, early Alzheimer, you really have to keep learning new things that are challenging, that are hard, but that's how your brain gets out of its comfort zone and stays active. Okay. Another question from here.
What is blood doping?
What is blood doping? Anyone knows what is blood doping?
No.
No?
Yes. It's
Yes.
it's like a performance enhancement drugs.
It's not exactly drugs, right?
Well, something like that.
Yes, it's something
The
like
athletes
that.
that like take drugs.
Okay. So the thing is that in your blood, you have cells that carry oxygen, right? They call red blood cells. Your oxygen levels correspond to your energy levels. That's why if person has an anemia, what is the first symptom of anemia? What's the most common symptom of anemia?
Isn't it lightheadedness?
Yes. What else? Absolutely true, Nicole.
Wait, the first symptom of what?
Anemia.
Isn't that low iron as well?
Weakness.
That's no, what?
Weakness?
Absolutely. Yes, weakness. You're tired, right? You have deficiency of red blood cells, you're tired. If you have high count of red blood cells, pretty much your energy levels, your endurance is better. If people travel, let's say to areas where high altitudes, let's say if you travel to Colorado, for example, high in the mountains, you're also gonna feel lightheaded. Why? Because high altitudes, oxygen levels are lower, right? So if you stay there for a while, your body will compensate by developing more red blood cells just to compensate it. So this is like natural way for many like marathon runners to train. So they travel to areas of high altitudes, they produce more blood cells, right? And when they basically go to marathons, they do much better. They have better endurance. This is legal. But sometimes people do shortcuts. What they do, before marathon, they take their own blood, I mean like months before, save it, store it, freeze it, right? And then before they inject themselves with their own blood, increasing number of red blood cells, right? Increasing their endurance. This is very hard to trace, right? It's pretty much, unless somebody tells on you, nobody can know it, right? But it's not considered legal, blood doping. Legal, go train in Colorado. Illegal, take your own blood and inject it before marathon. Okay. Okay, so, and the last one, you didn't ask me about why morning breath is so stinky.
Is it
Yes.
because of all the food particles and the lack of cleaning that you don't do the night before?
Yeah. Mhm. Food particle, you don't, basically you're supposed to brush your teeth before you go to sleep. Yeah, but, um, no, it's about saliva. Saliva in your mouth actually keeps bacteria that normally live in your mouth checked, right? So you produce saliva actually to cleanse your mouth. During night, production of saliva goes down when you sleep. So bacteria actually that live on your teeth, naturally live on your teeth, they are having like party, I guess, and that's why it smells bad in the morning. So during the day when saliva production is like okayish, it's not that bad. Okay, so yeah, you can continue with all these questions. And talking about science is, yeah, it's not like knowledge that was accumulated for centuries. And it's not really about memorizing particular information. This is also about, yeah, it's like activity that's continues through research, continues through people who want more answers to their questions. And it absolutely contributes to better understanding of the world. And sometimes it also helps you, you know, in everyday life, right? Like, can we trust packaging claims that companies make? I mean, we can only trust that the companies that actually write false information, they can get in trouble with the FDA, right? But they not always buy products that are FDA approved. So you have to be like aware of what's going on. Like you see, it helps to support your child's immunity. Come on. I mean, unless you add vitamin C, yes, you can claim it helps with immunity. You know, vitamin C actually is essential. It's important for healthy immune system. What's actually a good source of vitamin C?
Orange, vegetables and fruits.
Yes. And which one is loaded with vitamin C?
Candy and refined processed grains.
No, no, no.
Blair, I'm over here.
Which fruits are loaded with vitamin C?
Oranges and
Number one, guys, over there. Which are number one in terms of vitamin C?
oranges.
No. But you're close.
Oh, lemons.
Yes,
Lime.
absolutely.
Okay.
Lemons are number one in terms of vitamin C. So if you really want to boost, can you eat lemons without sugar, guys? Can you eat raw lemons?
I tried. Didn't work.
I don't like lemons. I like lime.
Lime. But can you eat lime without like anything? Just
I like it with salt.
If I eat lime, it has to be with like sugar. Like I dip the lime in the sugar and then it's like lemonade. I don't know. I don't know if I'm the only one that does that, but
yeah, I think lime is better just to dip into Corona, right? I mean beer. That's where lime goes.
yeah.
But guys, from here, like William, Adam, can you eat like raw lemon without sprinkling with sugar?
No.
No.
No, it's too sour, right?
Very sour, yeah.
Yes, David, what about you?
But I don't eat it with sugar. I eat it with salt. I mean, I can
With
eat
salt? Yeah, it's a different story.
salt and then I just dip it in salt and just like
People have different sensitivity to sourness in lime and lemon. Some are fine, some okay, and some like no, it has to be dipped in something else. But back to biology. So, what are the major questions in biology? And again, you can study in different levels. You can study in the level of chemicals, right? What a chemical and physical basis for life and its maintenance. Like how do organisms use genetic information to build themselves and reproduce? That's genetics. What are the diverse forms that life on Earth take, and how has this diversity arisen? That's something we're going to do on Wednesday, actually. We're going to talk about diversity, and we're going to talk about classification of living organisms. And this is something about ecology, right? How organisms interact with each other and with the environment. So I should say this is like on a very like basic level of chemicals. This is on the level of ecosystems, much more advanced. So again, it's a huge field. You can study marine biology. You can study biology in, I don't know, in the desert, in Antarctics, in Arctics, whatever you want. And since again, I'm not going to train you as biologists, so my goal is more like make you, help you to think scientifically. What?
An appreciation of science and scientific thinking.
Absolutely, yes, yes. And, you know, basically, as I said, biology will help you to look at the things from a different angle, things that you familiar with, just, you know, kind of like gonna get like something new. Yes, so think scientifically, use knowledge to make wise decision, understand more about life, understand more about yourself. And yes, and the biological literacy essential to modern world, absolutely. Climate, right? Understand more what's going on and what it can actually, what an impact climate change will have on our lives. And just a few words about this. This is a genetic test, 23andMe. Anyone from this class, did you do their genetic test? Yes? Ramsey, yes?
Yeah, I did it.
May I ask you, what was the reason?
I was just curious because I know that I am really mixed and I have a lot of different what's it called? Why can't I think of the word? Not nationalities, ethnicities.
Background, genetic background.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was just curious, like specifically what it was and like where I came from.
Okay, so was it really diverse?
Yeah, I mean, it was like kind of about what I expected, but there were some interesting things in there that I didn't think I had.
Okay. Okay, so who else? Who else did genetic test? Yes. What was the reason that you wanted to do this lab?
I just want to know where I come from.
Okay. But let me tell you a bit more. So yes, genetic test will tell you your genetic background, right? So from both parental sides. And a lot of people nowadays, what they also do, they do genetic testing to know about, I mean, to get information about their health, right? So there are some genetic diseases that are inherited. But genetic disease is something that if you inherit it, if you're not a carrier, but if you inherit it, it will become apparent sooner or later. There's something called genetic markers. Genetic markers will basically increase your risk for genetic disease, right? I don't know if you heard about genes that are associated with breast cancer, BRA1, BRA2. Have you heard about them? So if you have these genes, does it mean that you're gonna get cancer? What do you think?
Possibility, like you can.
Absolutely. It increases risk, but it doesn't guarantee you, right? Genetic disease is 100%, right? Genetic markers, it's only about risk of developing genetic condition, right? particular condition. So you can definitely do the test that will test all your genetic markers and tell you about your risks. Is it really worth money? Like money paid? What do you think? Is it really worth?
What was your
Isn't it
question?
like $100 or $110?
Yes, I think it's more than $100. I mean, like having genetic tests that will show you your like susceptibility to certain medical conditions based on your genetics. Is it really worth money spent?
Yes, I
Yes, I
think
believe.
so. So you can engage in preventative medicine.
Yeah, that's basically most people going to answer, how most people going to answer this question. I'm saying no, it's not really worth. And I can justify my answer just because, you know, I studied biology. And I can share with you why so. Genes that you inherit, right? That you have them, not necessarily that they will be active. There is something beyond genetics. It's called epigenetics. Epigenetics controls which genes will be turned on and which genes will be turned off. You might have a gene for breast cancer, but it might be turned off for the whole entire life. So genetic test will tell you you are susceptible. Yes, you have very high risk, but it still doesn't mean anything because you don't know. This test won't let you know which genes will eventually, you know, kind of like kick in and do their job. So it's like, I don't know, you have like a blueprint, you have like information, just raw information, but you don't know exactly which part of this information are relevant in this moment. So you might have genes, but you might never, ever develop condition. You have risk, but it still doesn't mean anything.
Oh, wouldn't you want to know that you have that gene in you? So like you would take the test, like, so if I didn't take the test, I wouldn't know that I have that gene in me. Of course I can guess, like my parents have it, like in a way, like if my parents has it and then it runs down the family generation, I feel like in a way I could sense that I have it, but you wouldn't be sure. So I feel like I would take it just to be sure that it's there, regardless of if it like you know kicks in later or not.
Like, listen, if you have family history, it's slightly different story. If you have family history, it's very likely that this gene is doing something, yes, from generation to generation if you inherit it. But let's say I have a friend who had this test and he told me that, you know, this test showed that he has a should have very good musical skills. My goodness, this guy can't sing a tune without like being so off, right? So yeah, that does show that he has a gene for, you know, for music, but to like, it doesn't make any sense. So that's what I'm saying. You have a bunch of information, but you don't know how this information actually is, how to say, you don't know exactly which genes are on and which genes are off. And that's what matters actually. Okay. Did I make this concept clear? I tried. Guys.
Yeah,
No.
I understand what you're trying to say, Anne.
So
Okay.
basically, you're saying that even if we have the gene, a gene makes us more predisposed to an illness or to an ability, but not a guarantee that we have said ability or illness.
Absolutely. I'm saying even if you have a gene, it still doesn't mean anything. But if something runs in the families, it's a bit different story. But like, I think, to my opinion, what these companies do, they just make business. Just doing their business, that's it. Okay, and so there are more questions, but let's move on with this material. So this is 23andMe. And yeah, so the literacy is actually again, be more aware of what world suggests you, right? Being more wise about making your decisions. And
Sorry, it's evening here.
yes. And the next one is scientific thinking.
Method.
Yes?
Sorry, I thought it was a scientific method.
No, this is scientific thinking, but it's actually close. We're getting to scientific method. You definitely learn at school scientific method. And let's say you make observation, right? Make observation about the world around you. And let's say you ask question. Let's take ask question, why sky is blue? Did you wonder?
No.
You know, wondered why sky is blue?
Yes, I've always wondered the sky is blue and why is it black in space? Is it because of the atmosphere?
Yeah. So what's going on? Why sky is not purple? And sometimes not purple, but why sky
I
is
was
not?
once told by my dad it's because it's a reflection of the water or something, or water is reflecting the sky or something. I don't know. It's yeah.
Other ideas, guys? Why sky is blue? Anybody else wants to say something?
Because penguins fly.
Okay.
Wait, do penguins really fly?
No, they don't.
Oh.
They don't really fly, yeah. But
Oh, okay.
come on. William, what about you? What about you? Like, what do you think? Why sky is blue?
I don't know, to be honest.
Okay, so
The gases and particles.
Yeah, I learned that in
Gases and the
Yeah.
particles of that, I guess.
yes. So the blue color is actually, you see it during the day, right? When the sun is on.
Yeah.
So what happens? So sun emits what? What comes from the sun?
Radiation and light.
Light, which is electromagnetic wave, right? It's actually particles, yes. Particles called photons. When these particles go through atmosphere, right, they are reflected. And they reflected, like whenever light is reflected, you have a spectrum, right? You know, the rainbow spectrum?
Yeah.
But usually it's reflected on their blue spectrum. However, when the sun, for example, goes down, or when it rises, it's still low, the angle is different, right? So the angle when this rays pass through the atmosphere, so that's why it's reflected in other colors like orange, yellow, red, purple. So, and the color changes depending on what's going on, like clouds usually change the reflection into the white, right? Dark clouds can make it look darker, but that's the whole thing. So just, again, you ask question and you try to do research. Like, I mean, to answer this question definitely took centuries of research to understand the nature of light, to understand what is atmosphere, what are gases actually make up atmosphere, and how it actually changes depending on the angle. So it's not an easy question to answer, by the way, to my opinion. But I think it's still worth answering, like knowing why sky is blue, why water is clear, why trees are green, and so and so and so.
Water wet.
What?
I keep hearing question like, why is water wet? Like,
Why water is wet? We're gonna talk about water, by the way. We'll talk. There's
yeah.
something, guys, trust me, you're gonna learn about water, something that you probably, again, didn't think about before. I promise you. Okay, so observation. So you look at the world and you try to explain certain phenomena. So your explanation is called a hypothesis, right? I mean, it's not going to work with the question why sky is blue, but it might actually work with the question why water is wet, maybe, right? You do a prediction, right? So let's say you can say that water is the only substance on Earth that can exist in 3 different states, right? Solid, gas, and liquid. So you conduct an experiment and you can play with temperature, you can play with many, many things. And then you draw a conclusion, right? So, and then you continue. This is like scientific thinking that definitely is something about scientific method, something really related. So yeah, step 1, make observation. And this is example with echinacea. I believe this book definitely came before what we deal with right now. So, you know, I'm not gonna do any reference to coronavirus, not at all. So we'll talk just about flu, right? I'm sure you heard about echinacea. Echinacea is a herbal supplement. It's a plant that many people believe that, for example, Native Americans used for a very long time to help immune system fight infection, right? So for example, people who take it as their supplement, right? It can reduce likelihood of catching common cold or duration of symptoms of cold. I know echinacea can come in pills, echinacea can come as a syrup. So the question, does it really work? So you can definitely like come out like with a scientific approach to this question, right? And you can say that, yes, echinacea can reduce likelihood of catching cold and duration of cold symptoms. That's going to be your hypothesis. So to check this hypothesis, you have to generate testable predictions. What could be testable predictions? Testable predictions, people who take echinacea, they are sick, let's say, 3 days instead of 5. Or people who take echinacea don't catch any cold at all, right? So that's going to be prediction. Yes, you follow? Guys, you with me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm just writing this down.
Okay. So hypotheses could be different, right? For example, negative statement. Negative statement means no. We start from their point that saying that there is no relationship between echinacea and duration of cold. Right? So you have to disprove this, right? Instead of proof, null negative statement, you have to disprove. Alternative hypothesis saying that basically it's impossible to prove it, right? So alternative hypothesis can say it can work for a particular group of population, it can work under certain conditions, another condition doesn't work. So it's not universal explanation, right? It really depends. So for example, if you refer to null or negative hypothesis, you can say echinacea has no effect, right? This is a null hypothesis. Regular hypothesis say yes, we can test it and prove it or disprove it, doesn't matter. Anyways, you check either one of them, either regular hypothesis saying there is association or null hypothesis saying there is no association. And for example here, right? So prediction. Prediction means that could be. If you refer to regular hypothesis, not to null, right? So individual who take echinacea likelihood of catching cold is lower, duration of symptoms shorter. Which means also that those that don't take echinacea, their likelihood of catching cold is higher and duration of cold symptoms is longer, right? So by this, next step will be you can set up an experiment, right? An experiment will actually, the results of the experiment will either support your hypothesis or disprove it, right? What I really don't like about this book and presentation is that they kind of like jump from topic to topic. I really want to stick to echinacea. Okay, so this is developing a hypothesis. Now, just for echinacea only, and you have no clue how many companies actually do this type of things. Any medication that comes on market has to go through clinical trials. Clinical trials start very early. They start in the labs. They start with the test tubes. They have to go through a number of phases before they will be tested on volunteers. Not really volunteers. Usually companies pay people to participate in human clinical trials. So I think this one is really mild because echinacea doesn't really it's not really toxic, right? You don't know if it works or not, but it's not toxic. It's not gonna actually harm you if you take it for sake of clinical trials, right? But very, very basic thing. So normally what they do, they divide into groups, right? Participants. Usually within these groups, like you have those that receive treatment and those that don't receive treatment. Those that receive treatment should absolutely be divided into those that take a real thing and a placebo. You know what's placebo, guys?
A placebo is a drug, usually a sugar pill that's meant to show how much of a medicine has an effect, to compare whether the medicine has an effect or not. It's like it's a psychological pill, psychosomatic medicine.
Placebo is something that basically you receive it. Again, for the sake of experiment, you don't know whether it's going to work or not, but you take it. And the other thing is that placebo has an effect. Sometimes people just, taking the pill makes them feel different. Yes? I'm sure you heard about that. Placebo has a very, very good effect in pain. When you give a pill, which could be like sugar, and you tell that this is a painkiller, it has at least, I think at least has like 20% effect on people, which means again, it's kind of like more mental than physiological. Okay, so treatment will receive treatment, half will receive placebo. And then all 4 groups will be exposed to virus. And after they're exposed to virus, they're gonna continue with each group, treatment, no treatment, half will receive echinacea, half will receive placebo, half will receive echinacea, and half will receive placebo. And my question to you, if echinacea has an effect, which group will actually get the best results in terms of cold and cold symptoms, if echinacea is effective? Group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, which will get the best results?
Group 1.
Group 1. And you also should see results in which group?
Group
Some
2.
results.
Group 2.
Group 3.
Group 3, right, because they receive echinacea. This group number 2, group number 4 don't receive echinacea at all, right? So basically, if echinacea works, you should see results here, number 1. You should see results in group number 3. And you should see the difference with group number 2, group number 4. So that's the idea. And then you look at the results, right? And quite often, before you move on, you basically, when you get results, quite often you have to revise your design. You might actually think about something that you didn't think before. Quite often, in research, people have to do it again and again and again, right? And we'll skip the eyewitness and we'll look at the results, right? So we'll look at results with echinacea. And results of echinacea show that, you see, cold symptoms present in all 4 groups, and duration of cold symptoms were exactly the same in all 4 groups, which means echinacea doesn't work, right? So hypothesis was not supported by data. And whether you take echinacea, you don't take echinacea, it doesn't have any effect. Whether you're susceptible to cold and duration of symptoms, okay? But I mean, some people still get some comfort in getting it, okay? Any questions here so far? Any questions?
So it's all a process of not so much elimination, but of data collection and testing your own hypothesis.
Yeah, but the thing is that, I mean, when you design such an experiment, you should be very careful in terms of participants you select, right? They should be very, very diverse. They should be diverse in terms of gender. They should be diverse in terms of age. They should be diverse in terms of health, right? Let's say if you test echinacea on children versus you test echinacea on adults, it could be two different worlds. So, I mean, it's really hard to get the ideal design for experiment, but you always can try, you know, make it statistically sound. And we're gonna get to statistics shortly, okay? When do hypotheses become theories? So hypothesis is proposed explanation, right? It's like something that you work with. But if your hypothesis was supported with experiments, if it was like results were reproduced many times, it can become a theory, right? So theory is not speculation, it's not a guess. It's actually much broader in scope than hypothesis, right? It has to be repeatedly tested. And something that you actually take, let's say, I mean, theory is something that you work with, right? Let me give you an example of hypothesis and theory. Hypothesis will be something that would actually try to figure out what is responsible for carrying genetic information. And you say, what if DNA molecule is the one? This is a hypothesis. Knowing that DNA carries genetic information is a theory, okay? Actually, it's a matter of fact. It's actually more than a theory. But this is a difference, okay? This is something that you work with to answer the question. This is when the question is answered and the answer is accepted. Clear? Eyes.
I'm sorry. So a hypothesis is a good hypothesis is testable. It is not a speculation, and it must be able to stand to scrutiny. If it's not true, it's not true, but it can always be revised.
That's a theory. That's what you talk about.
Theory.
You talk
Yeah.
about theory. Hypothesis, it's just still a proposed explanation, proposed. It's not accepted. It's not something that you actually can, you know, rely on to move forward with science. And that's what I was talking about. Like when you design an experiment, what do you keep in mind? Treatment, right? So treatment, like experimental condition that you apply on individual. Then you have experimental group, right? Experimental group usually receives treatment. Control group is the one that is not exposed to, which means you have to compare between these two to prove your results, right? So with echinacea, experimental group was receiving treatment, was receiving echinacea. Control group was receiving nothing. And variables that you can manipulate pretty much during your experiment. And they're usually described as dependent and independent. Guys, give me 1 second. So, dependent and independent. So, controlling variables. So, controlling variables is something, again, you actually use for, just want to show you here. I'm sorry for. Here's the variables, right? Independent variables, something that you can't manipulate, right? Independent variables could be like, let's say age, it could be gender, it could be your height, it could be your medical condition, something that you can manipulate. It's independent. Dependent variables, that's something that wait, yes, okay. No, sorry. Dependent is that something that you don't have control. Independent is something that you can actually measure, right? So for example, if you measure levels of sugar, right, your dependent variable could be age, and independent variable could be our sugar levels after the meal, for example. Okay, so let me go back. Yes, so these are the variables that you operate during your experiment design. And controlling variables, as I said, is something that you really have to keep an eye on when you start up experiment. Like I told you, if you, for example, test effect of particular, let's say, food supplement like echinacea, you have to make sure that in your groups, you minimize any difference between participants, right? In terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of medical conditions, okay? And no control. So you see, this is an example of poor experimental design. Like you take 24 individuals with gastric ulcer, all of them receive experimental treatment, 0 received control treatment. Treatment was balloon with refrigerated fluid placed in stomach, right? Results, 100% patients experience relief. Can you trust these results? Can you trust that this one works?
No, it's not, because it doesn't have a control group.
Exactly, right? So what if actually, let's say this is like refrigerated fluid. But just thinking about like, if you just put a balloon with a warm fluid, right, versus balloon with a cold fluid, then you kind of like look for a difference, right? But if they receive the same treatment, I mean, you don't really trust these results. What if just, again, manipulation itself can cause relief, regardless of what kind of fluid was put inside, okay? So this is no control. And this is like well-controlled do-over, right? So you have two groups, one received experimental treatment. And as I said, this is refrigerated fluid. Control treatment, balloon with room temperature. And what you can see here results, 34 patients experienced relief with cold, 38 patients experienced relief with warm, okay? So basically this results, they really, put this results to shame, right? Because it doesn't make any sense. As I said, manipulation itself can cause some relief. And that's why it's called placebo effect. Placebo effect is when people respond to treatment itself, regardless what exactly is the treatment. Okay? And as I said, placebo effect shows how your brain actually frames the information, frames manipulation, frames the treatment. Let me tell you a story about placebo effect, and you're gonna take a break. Guys, you know it's Parkinson's disease?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So what happens to people who suffer from Parkinson's disease? What are the symptoms?
Tardive, some sort of dyskinesia where you shake your hands a lot. You don't have control over your body. Sorry.
Yes. Anybody else wants to add?
Isn't it? Yeah, like loss of motor functions and speech, I think.
Yes. And Parkinson's disease is believed to develop due to death of neurons, brain cells, in a specific brain region. And there is a very important neurotransmitter they produce. It's called dopamine, right? Dopamine is involved in many aspects of brain function, but here dopamine is actually involved in tuning your motion, fine tuning of your movement, right? Making sure that the right muscles are involved in movement, and muscles that are not relevant will be silent, right? So that's why if dopamine levels go down, in this case, people develop tremor, right? Which means extra movement that is not considered necessary, right? Plus, people have problems with movement initiation. They want to stand up, but they're gonna have a lot of trouble doing so, right? Brain commands, get up, but person can't really perform this movement smoothly, okay? So Parkinson's disease basically destroys what's called the motor system movement. People suffer a lot. And there are different approaches how to treat it. Unfortunately, treatment with medications doesn't really improve the condition. So alternative treatments include something called deep brain stimulation. Patients actually get implantation of electrodes right into the brain. They get remote control, and whenever they need, they just press a button, get some electrical signal, and move. Some people say it helps, some people say it doesn't. So what I was reading once, that there was a proposed surgery which can permanently relieve symptoms of Parkinson's. So what they did, they engaged, again, patients to participate in clinical trials of this procedure. They took one group who received actual surgery, and they had another group who received something called sham surgery. What is sham surgery? You get the surgery, when they open your brain, do something, but don't do actual surgical manipulation. It's called sham, which means it's like literally you go through surgery without actual changes. Okay? So what I was reading about a guy who participated, he had severe Parkinson, right? Who participated in the surgery, like, I mean, in clinical trials. And he got full recovery. It was a medical miracle because, you know, you basically don't see people recovered from Parkinson. It's pretty much impossible. Your neurons are dead. Like, how can you be cured from Parkinson? But he was cured. Like, he regained all motor control that he didn't have before. And you know what's really interesting about this story? That he didn't get an actual surgery. He had a sham. Okay? So what does this story teach us?
The power of placebo effects and their ability to make people feel better.
Yeah. What else?
The power of science and how we must strive to look to be we have to strive to inquire more about the universe.
Okay. Who else wants to add something? Please.
Sorry, I'm just kind of tired.
Okay.
I have a question. So if the placebo testing on him worked, quote unquote, worked for him, then was the Parkinson's all something mental?
It's a great question, Samuel. It's a really great question. The thing is that what they found that the surgery didn't work. That's like the actual surgery didn't really improve anything, right? And the fact that that guy recovered from sham surgery makes it even more interesting.
Could he have been misdiagnosed?
No, he actually had Parkinson's disease. And the last story is about a guy who was working on their ship that was sailing from Europe to United States. And the ship had refrigerators, like very powerful refrigerators on the bottom, you know, in the basement of the ship. So one guy can somehow get himself locked up in their refrigerator. Next day, he was found dead from hypothermia. He died from, you know, because the temperature was too low. He froze to death. And you know what was funny? Nothing funny when a person dies. But the thing was that actually in that one particular one that he got into and got locked up, the temperature was normal. He believed that it was a freezer. And that's why he died from hypothermia. Okay? So, yeah, we should always take consideration things that how our brain responds to particular conditions, specifically when it comes to health, right? Okay. Any questions? Let's take a break. Okay, let's take a break till 9:30. Okay, 10 minutes. So I'll see you guys soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's continue. Again, there are a few more things to talk about. So we talked about placebo, so how your brain frames all the things. Did I share with you? No, I don't think I did that. So share screen. Okay. So that's placebo effect. And influences experiments outcome. I think there's something to do with a horse that knew their numbers. And that was something that this guy was actually faking rather than presenting a smart horse. But I should say quite often people are really, really biased when they do research. They always try to go into results that will support their hypothesis, right? And that makes a bias. And these are results that are not really trustworthy. I think you can read in the book what's the story behind this horse. I really forgot. And so to avoid this bias, there are different ways. One is what's called blind experimental design. Like if you conduct research, right? So you have groups of participants, right? And you provide them with treatment. Usually, like in blind experimental design, you don't know exactly which group individuals belong to, right? Which means you're not going to favor those that are receiving treatment versus those who are control group, right? So this is blind. Let's say you have two mice, right? One mouse receives, let's say, injection of amphetamine, and another mouse receives injection of saline, right? And you have to test them, let's say, in the maze. Which one will find the way through the maze faster, right? So if you do this research, right, you're not supposed to know. I mean, if you run the experiment, right, you should be blind to whether mouse received amphetamine or saline, right? Double blind. Double blind is that not experimental subjects or experimenter know which treatment they receive, right? So, which means that people don't know, people who participate, subjects participate, they don't know whether they're in control group or in experimental group. And the experimenter doesn't know it either. So this is double blind. And randomized, so is when their subjects don't know which treatment, if any, they receive. That's called randomized experimental design, okay? But blind experimental design is a very good approach because, as I said, people usually get really biased towards favorable results, right? And that can affect the way experiment is conducted. And so the biases, right? For example, you see, percentage of paper published with female first author. And this is in scientific world, right? And this is scientific publications. So if reviewer knows, right, who wrote the paper, male or female, you see, only 23% of female will get published. If reviewer doesn't know, it's actually a significant difference, 31%, right? When the papers will be published. Still not 50, I don't know why, but as I said, people usually really biased in terms of their goals, right? Especially in scientific world. And what's really important is replication, right? You published results. Let's say you publish results saying that echinacea has no effect, right? Which is, I don't think, really worth publishing. So means that whoever gonna conduct the same experiment should get no effect. If, let's say, people gonna reproduce this experiment, I'll say echinacea actually shortens duration of cold and prevents actually catching cold, which means this result won't be accepted anymore, right? And that's actually how many great, really great ideas failed because, you know, sounds great, but were not reproduced, okay? And then how you display your results is depends on what you want to present. Bar graph is usually presents well differences between different groups. Bar is perfect showing treatment, non-treatment, right? Control versus experimental group. You can look at the values right away. Line graph is very good to show changes across time, right? So for example, you started, let's say in September, and you start in September and you can present results for October, November, December, January, right? Or for example, for patients whose temperature is measured throughout the day, line graph is a very good showing if patient's temperature is stable or changes during the day. Pie chart is usually for statistical representation showing percentages of different groups, right? Let's say if this group is echinacea before cold and during the cold, echinacea only during the cold, no echinacea, right? This is going to be pie chart. Percentage, but bar graph, I still believe in this case will be better because it can show you directly, visually, if you see the difference between different groups. Okay, and what are the elements? So if this is a line chart, right, line graph, so quite often the x-axis is time. It could be dose. It could be, again, any variable that basically might indicate point of change, right? So something changed from 0 to 1, something changed from 1 to 2. This is x-axis. Y-axis is something that can be measured, right? This is performance on midterm exam, right? Here, but it can be blood pressure, it can be sugar levels, it can be, I don't know, like something that might be changed. So for example, this one shows time spent studying each day in hours, and this shows performance on midterm, right? Which basically shows that more hours you study, better your performance, but it's not a significant difference between 1 hour, for example, and let's say 3 hours. It's better than 0, but not significant difference, right? This is called dependent variable. Dependent variable is something that you can measure. Independent variable is that you can change, right? You can change in terms of time, you can change in terms of value, You can change in terms of concentration, right? But something that independent that you can change. Dependent is what you measure. Okay? Any questions?
No.
Yes. What's the question? No? Okay, so I explained to you independent is that you can change. Dependent is the one that you measure, the one that you observe. And sometimes graphs can be misleading. In statistics, you know, people like, I think the big misconception in terms of statistics is that statistics usually represents large numbers, right? For example, human height in statistics, right? So you can see tall woman and short guy, right? The statistics says that on average, male body is 15% larger than female. The statistics. But they are just, I mean, like showing deviation from the average, nothing more than that, okay? Deviation means like being far from the average. So if average female is 5.4, right? No, 5 feet 4 inches plus minus 2 feet, no, 2.5 inches, sorry. 2.5 inches, right? And average male is 5 feet 9.5 inches plus minus 3 inches, right? This is average, but within the average, there is a range. You can be on the low range, you can be on the high range, right? So for example, let's say she's on the high range for female and he's on the low range or maybe average range for male. It's something like, for example, you say, oh, people who are left-handed, they are creative, right? Let's say. And somebody will say, come on, my grandma, she's left-handed and she was dumb. Something like that, stupid, right? To say, but you can say, this is just one case, right? And you talk about average. That includes many individuals. So statistics is extremely important tool in science because if you want to support your results with your data, you have to do the statistical analysis. It depends exactly on experiment itself. It depends on the data. But statistics is essential to make results trustworthy, right? Like what? Like, let's see, drawing conclusions based on statistics, right? So students without textbook score average 60%, plus minus 5%. Students with textbook score average 95%, plus minus, right? This is an overlap between these two, right? Which means that some students with no textbook score good grades, and people with textbook can score low grades, right? But this is a significant difference. Difference between 60 and 95 statistically will show you that this difference is trustworthy, okay? For this, you have to go deeper into statistical analysis and just understand how it works. Okay, and correlations. What is positive correlation? Positive correlation is when one variable increases, so does the other. Like this one, for example, to a certain extent. Positive correlation, time spent studying, right? The score goes up. Or let's say, can you give me an example of positive correlation?
A positive correlation between, say, studying and exam performance as seen on this chart right here.
Yeah, or you can say, let's say during the first 10 years, right, your age correlates with your height, right? You see positive correlation. You're
Okay.
getting
Sorry
taller,
about
taller,
that.
and taller. That will be positive correlation, right? Negative correlation is when one variable goes up and another one goes down. So it's, let's say it goes like this. And negative correlation can say that, let's say the older you get, your immune system performance decreases, right? That will be negative correlation. Or let's say negative correlation might be between, no, positive correlation, let's say the more muffins you eat, the higher your weight. That will be positive correlation. I don't know, right? Okay, one more time, guys. Can you give me examples? Positive and negative correlation, please.
The positive correlation between I mean, this is quite controversial, but eating donuts and gaining weight, or
Yeah,
eating a lot of butter and gaining weight. I mean, it doesn't always happen all the time, but if you
well, it
overeat,
depends. Well, maybe on average, yes, it works. Okay, somebody else? Vittoria, can you give example of positive correlation?
Positive correlation. Like maybe like the more you sleep, the more
The
well
better
rested
your
you are.
attitude, right?
Yeah, or I don't know.
I guess
You caught me off guard.
Yes, please.
if you study, you'll pass a test.
Yes.
Or like the better you eat, the healthier you are.
Yeah, makes sense. The more you exercise, the healthier you are.
Yeah, the more you lose weight or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Which is a positive thing, right?
Mhm.
Can you give example of negative correlation?
If you vape, your lungs are gonna be bad.
What?
Like if you do vape, like hookah, like that, your lungs are gonna be bad. This is bad for your lungs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the more like crack you do.
Crack.
Okay. Another one about negative correlation. David, what about you? Can you give example of negative correlation?
You said negative correlation?
Mm-hmm.
Not practicing and then underperforming.
Not practicing. No, that's positive. It's negative correlation is when one goes up and another one goes down. Let's say negative correlation can be, let's say, just like
I mean, who has bad grades?
I mean, if you study well but you receive bad grades, that's negative correlation, right?
What about if you have many absence? You're gonna fail the
Yeah,
course.
the more absences, the worse grade.
Yeah.
Excellent, Giovanna, excellent. Well, let's say the more you watch TV, the less you are physically fit, right? That's negative correlation. So, okay.
No.
I hope you got the point. And the last thing here, this is like bad signs that leads to dangerous behavior. And I'm just gonna talk about this and we're gonna go into biology. So this is the last thing. So have you heard about vaccines and autism? Have you heard about this?
I heard of that. Is it? I don't know if it's like real or not though.
Okay, so in 90s, British doctor, he published results saying that when children receive shot vaccination for MMR, which means measles, mumps, and rubella, they were in high risk for developing autism. And that created such a stir, it just was insane. Because until now, you can find on internet so many groups that actually are against vaccination, and you see publications that, and you know, the funniest thing was that doctor actually admitted that this publication was not really based on proper scientific results. He retrieved the paper right? But it didn't help. It already created the movement. So you can speculate a lot why people still believe that vaccinations can cause autism. What I know for sure that many companies, no matter what, they actually did
The
reformulation.
paper, sorry. The paper gave a lot of vaccine denialists a big claim of what people fear that the. I'm sorry. My parents were kind of taken in by this. The paper gave a big excuse for other people not to take their vaccinations because they ultimately feared that their kids would have autism.
Yes, the thing is, but
More than that, and more than that, because Wakefield had his license revoked, it sort of played into his whole shtick, which he then paraded around as some sort of independent scientist. Okay, that's all I have to say. Sorry.
yeah, you're right. But the thing is that, yeah, I mean, it definitely didn't create any good, right? And again, even his like own words about that the paper was not really scientifically correct, right? As I said, didn't help to stop that movement. And I mean, personally strongly support vaccination. I believe it's better to get a vaccine than to get sick, especially for children when it can be very, very dangerous. And especially for some conditions that could create severe complication like polio, right? So I think vaccine for polio saved so many lives. It's just insane. It's unbelievable. And plus, if you have science on your side, why won't you use it, right? So the thing is, your immune system works both ways. Your immunity will develop whether you sick, right? Let's say you're sick with mumps, you have a lifelong immunity. But with a vaccine, you're gonna have lifelong immunity without actually being sick with mumps. So which one is better? Definitely vaccine. But still, companies reformulated the vaccine contents still, right? They removed chemicals that can pose any hazard, right? But as I said, unfortunately, the problem was created until our days. Okay, so now let's get to biology. And so there are two things. There are two slides, but there are two things that I want to talk to you about. So characteristics of living organisms. How can you characterize them? Generally speaking, in this world, right? Whatever you see in this world, whatever you can feel in this world, is divided into, and let me, do this. I'm gonna stop sharing for a second and I'm gonna use the whiteboard. Can you see it, guys?
Yes.
So in this world, there is something we call matter, right? Matter is whatever physical thing around us. Matter generally divided into non-living and living, right? Non-living matter will be rocks, will be plastic, will be cars, right? Living, all living organisms around us and including us, right? So both living and non-living are made of, what are they made of? Atoms and molecules, right? Yeah, you agree with me? So who knows, what's the difference? What actually makes the difference between non-living and living?
Non-living. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Having a nervous system?
I mean, do trees have a nervous system?
Oh yeah, I guess not. Or like, well, I'm not sure. They have a, damn, I can't remember what it's called. I mean, they like breathe in their own way. They get nutrients.
Okay.
Oh, cells. Cells. Okay, yeah.
Okay. So in living, atoms and molecules are organized into basic units of life called cell. Cell is basic unit of life, right? So it's enough to be made of only one cell to be considered a living organism, right? We all start our life as one cell. As adults, we need of like 75 trillions of cells as an adult, but I should say the majority of organisms in this world, vast majority, actually made of only one cell. If you think about bacteria, yeah, they made of only one cell. So if you're made of cell and you live in an organism, what actually characterizes you? So let's talk about this. So as you can see, complex ordered organization consisting of one or more cell. You're gonna learn about the cell, what actually cells are made of, right? But there are certain rules that apply to cell structure in terms of what molecules make up the cell, right? So one more time, you're made of cell, you live in organism. Use and transformation of energy to perform work, right? So for living organism, you need to obtain energy. Plants obtain energy through what? What plants do to obtain energy?
The sun?
They use in the sunlight energy.
Photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis, yes. What we do, we obtain energy through what?
Food.
And?
Water.
Water.
Oxygen.
Air. Oh, yeah,
We
oxygen.
obtain energy through food and oxygen. And that's called respiration, right? Which is opposite from photosynthesis. Okay? Sensitivity and responsiveness to external environment, right? So you're independent organism, right? If you made a one cell, you're like, you are separated from the environment, but you can feel, you can respond, right? Our sensitivity depends on our sensory organs like eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, right? So these are all to collect information from the environment, right? But if you look at the plants, right? What plants are normally sensitive to? Can you tell me?
Stimuli such as pain.
Plants? Come on.
Water.
Plants sensitive to water. What else plants sensitive to?
Stings from insects.
What plants depend on? They depend on sunlight, right?
Sunlight.
So let's say you have a plant in the house, right? So you put it next to the window. What's gonna happen to the leaves?
Gonna grow.
Yes, they will face the window, right? You turn it around, and over time, they're gonna still.
They're going to wilt and dry out.
If you don't water them, but
Water them.
I'm talking about source of light. Okay, so sensitivity, responsiveness, regulation of homeostasis. What is homeostasis? Homeostasis means your stable internal environment. As an independent organism, you're capable of keeping your internal environment stable. You know, it really depends on the organism, right? This is one thing for plants, another one for bacteria, and completely different for humans, right? But we actually spend a lot of resources to keep, for example, our temperature stable, right? Yeah. You know, there are animals that depend on their temperature from outside. Can you give me an example of animals that depend on temperature on outside?
Can you repeat the question? Bears, they need to hibernate in the winter.
No, I'm talking about animals that can't keep their temperature stable.
Reptiles?
What?
Reptiles?
Absolutely, reptiles, amphibians, They depend on the temperature on the outside. That's why you see lizards usually under the sun, right? When they're warming up their bodies, right? We can keep our temperature stable by using different approaches. How to do that? We have to keep our fluids stable, prevents dehydration. We have to keep our glucose level stable, and many other things, right? So that's homeostasis. Growth, development, and reproduction. So even for tiny bacteria, right, there's still some room to grow, right? So if you made only one cell, this is one thing, but for development, you need the cells to acquire different shapes and functions, right? I told you we started life as one cell, but eventually cells became neurons, other cells became muscles, other cells became skin, right? That's development, right? You develop tissues, you develop organs, you develop organ system, you develop entire organism. And reproduction, do all living organisms able to reproduce? Tell me.
Yes.
You sure?
You said living.
Do all living organisms able to reproduce?
No, only mammals.
Mammals? No, come on. Okay, let me show you something. Tell me, do you consider bee a living organism?
Do you consider what?
Bee.
A bee?
Are they alive?
Yeah.
Then Google, not big Google, Google. Okay, let me show you something. Members of bee colony.
Isn't it just only females can reproduce?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. You see? You see this one?
Wait, not all bees have stingers, right?
Not all of them.
So which ones have stingers? Just like the queen bee, or
No. I think the queen bee doesn't have stingers. I think it's only their working bees. They have stingers. You know?
Yeah, either way, I get scared of them.
Yeah. Okay, so you see, this is a queen, right? So what queen is doing? What's her job?
To
Reproduce, right?
Queen is laying eggs, okay? So the queen is laying eggs, and from the eggs can hatch either workers or drones. Drones considered males, right? So drones don't work. They don't collect pollen, whatever, to make a honey. What drones do? They make sure the queen will lay eggs. But majority of the colony are workers, right? They are kind of females, Because why kind of females? Because they are not able to lay eggs. They're not able to reproduce, right? And it's pretty much applicable to many insects that live in colonies, right? The same goes for termites, for example, right? There's a queen, there are workers, there are drones, right? So it means like if you're unable to reproduce, it doesn't really, how to say, remove you from living organisms, right? You're still alive, right? Or for example, hybrids. If you cross horse and a donkey, what do you get?
Mule.
Mule. Can mules have babies?
I don't know. I think
Nope. No, they're sterile because they're hybrids, right? They're neither horses nor donkeys. Are they alive?
I killed a bee once. It was so
Yes.
It's so funny.
Wait, so zebras have babies?
Okay, so growth, development, reproduction, right? So reproduction, you can get some exceptions from the rule. And the last one is evolutionary adaptation, which means that living organisms can evolve, which means change over time, right? So basically produce new species, not new offspring, but new species. So these are characteristics. And the last thing is I just want, okay, I'm not gonna use the PowerPoint anymore. I want to use the whiteboard. Okay. So what living organisms need? Okay. So thing number one. I call it what living organisms need to survive. Okay, it's not really applicable to all, but number one will be oxygen. How long can we survive without oxygen?
In a couple of days, weeks.
Oxygen?
Humans? Oh, oxygen. I was talking. I was thinking about water.
No, tell me, how long can you survive without oxygen?
I say like
like
10 minutes.
1 minute.
I should say like 3-6 minutes on average, right? That's how long you can survive. Why do we need oxygen, guys?
To breathe.
What?
So we can breathe.
No, guys, we breathe to get oxygen, not vice versa.
Oh, to release carbon dioxide.
We need oxygen for energy, right?
Oh.
We're gonna talk about this, but we basically consume oxygen to provide your cells with a fuel to function, to stay alive. You know, I should say the most oxygen sensitive organ is definitely the brain, but the heart is also quite sensitive to levels of oxygen. So you won't be able to survive more than 3-6 minutes without oxygen. What else do we need? Water, right? How long you can survive without water?
3 days.
Mm.
One day.
I say 2 days.
Without water?
I read before.
Actually read that.
Oh, 1 hour. No, sorry.
No.
24 hours.
I read before that 3 to 4 days, right? 3 to 4 days, kind of.
Basically, up to 7 days. Up to 7 days. They found actually people, you know, after earthquakes, some people survived without water up to 7 days. But I should say basically, death from dehydration is horrible, to my opinion. I better, like, you know, strangle me, like strangle me.
Food.
But don't leave me without water. This is a horrible.
You drink your own urine?
Yeah, people drink their own urine. Yes.
Oh, right?
Disgusting.
I mean,
I don't think you survive, right?
No experiment idea. Let's go.
Oh my god.
The hypothesis.
Yep, but
that is not a valid hypothesis.
drinking urine, yeah, people are doing that. Trust me, people are doing.
All you people do.
On that show, Man vs. Wild, he does it.
Some people believe drinking urine is beneficial. I'm not sure about that, but some people.
I think people that just don't have access to actual water do that. Like,
yeah.
I don't think a person that, you know, a regular normal person will ever do that.
People from Flint, Michigan.
Yeah, but again, imagine.
They fucking.
Like, imagine earthquake, right? Imagine you're alive, but you know you don't know how long you're gonna spend like that, right? Before like you're found. So let's say, as I said, some people survive up to 7 days without water in these conditions. Why we need water? Basically, you can say almost half of your body is made of water. Water is ideal media for your cells, for your for basically conducting all life all life functions is actually in the water. And that's probably what is the reason why life started in the water, right? Why so many organisms, majority of living organisms in this world actually found in the water rather than on land, believe it or not. Okay? Then talk about food. How long can you survive without food in case you have water? Just don't say 3 hours, please.
Isn't it like a month or something?
Yeah, surprisingly, up to months, up to, I should say, like 4 weeks. I mean, it's also, I believe it's a horrible death. Dying from, starvation. It's a horrible one, but yep, up to 4 weeks. We can store resources to a certain extent. We can't store oxygen pretty much. We can't store much water, but food, yep. So there's something.
I have a question real quick.
Yes,
So
please.
if we only eat and we don't drink any water for like 7 days, would that hurt our bodies, even though we're eating?
I mean, depends on what you eat. That's the thing, really. Because some foods, they have water, right? For example, think about oranges. They have plenty of water. But if you eat dry meat, no, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fruits and veggies can provide you with water, but certain foods, like say, again, like nuts, no, right? So it depends. Okay, so what we also need, we need pressure. I'm talking about atmospheric pressure, right? That is important for us to breathe properly, to inhale
Gravity.
and exhale. Gravity, you can survive
Don't
without
humans
gravity.
need gravity? Wait, you can survive without gravity, but don't humans need gravity to build strong bones and muscles?
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Maybe not, because maybe one day humans will be able to live with an eighth gravity or a fifth gravity.
On Mars?
I don't know. Yeah, Mars or the moon, or maybe in space.
Yeah, maybe. So, but I'm talking about pressure is important, right? So people usually
Sure.
feel the difference if they go like high in the mountains where it's hard to breathe, or they go deep
So
in
the
the
right amount of atmospheric pressure, not excessive or not an excessive amount.
Okay, guys, listen. And this includes you. I really love your questions. I do. But please let me finish my sentence before you ask it. Okay? So pressure. Pressure is important. And the last thing is temperature, right? So we can maintain our own temperature, as I said. And talking about human, it's approximately between 98 to 99 Fahrenheit. So this is a normal range, right? For example, again, inside the body, your temperature is much higher than on the surface, right? So we can keep this temperature stable, right? But it shouldn't go extreme, right? We won't be able to survive in it's very low or it's very high, right? So we depend on the normal range of temperature to, again, carry out chemical reactions. Okay, so that's what we pretty much, again, that's about living organisms. So this is it in terms of the lecture. So this lecture will be posted, as I said, and it's recorded. Let me just stop recording.